In this brief chapter, I will be talking about the fundamentals of genetic algorithms and how we can apply this method on optimization of our mechanical parts. I will give examples to that from time to time and try to come up with a kind of an implementation approach for optimizing the topology of mechanical parts. First of all, let's discuss some other optimization techniques briefly. As you know, in most of them, in such heuristic techniques, we are looking for a kind of a local minima, or it might be a maxima, since we have a kind of an objective function. This might be continuous or discontinuous, but the thing is that we are trying to find a minimum or a maximum value. And in some cases, you may be trapped in, as in this case here, into local minima. It may not be actually the minimum of the whole function. There might be such problems. And another problem in such heuristic approaches is that you cannot use different types of variables in your implementation. For instance, this is not possible in the conventional type of heuristic techniques. Here you see we have Boolean values, batteries, numbers, but in this conventional approach, you need to use the same type of variables for your, let's say, solutions. And in 1975, ODTÜ proposed some genetic algorithms. Obviously, it's inspired by the genetics and the natural selection. And with the help of them, we are trying to maximize the fitness of our solution. So we have a problem. We have sets of solutions to this problem and try to find the best one. But at iterations, in between iterations, we do modifications on the members, on the solutions, so that in each generation, these members will be modified. We will have stronger solutions which have higher, let's say, function values. There are other optimization methods like simulated annealing, particles form optimization, but today we will be focusing on the genetic algorithms, and as I mentioned, I will try to employ this one on a topology optimization problem. So what are we going to discuss? The basics, genetics and natural selection. We'll be going through a simple genetic algorithm. I'm not going to play this game, but we may just have a look at the result of it, discuss how we can do the encoding and decoding, discuss the fitness functions, how we can write such fitness functions, and lastly discuss what type of operators we need during this genetic algorithms. First of all, let's discuss some fundamentals, some terms about genetic algorithms. First of all, what we have, natural selection, and this is the fundamental thing about genetic algorithms. We are trying to find the best ones in a population, since if they are preserved, then the next generations will be a bit better than the previous generation. That's called natural selection, and we are trying to optimize the generations with the help of this kind of operator. And as I said, genetic algorithm will be applying similar things as in nature. That will be our main operator. And in the problems in such design or other kind of problems, each solution will be represented as a kind of an individual. So, and we will check the performance of that individual. If it's good enough, then we will keep its actual genetics and convey it to the next generation. If the performance of that individual is not good, then it's better we don't keep it in the next generation. Instead, we have new children, we have some mutations, and try to improve the performance, the overall performance of the next generation. And we need to have again an objective function. Here in this slide is represented as J, and our aim is always to increase the average fitness of each generation. So in a single generation, let's say we may have hundreds. Sorry. 100 individuals, members, and then in the next iteration, we will once again have 100 number of members, individuals. But the thing is that the average of J, or the average fitness function of the next generation, will be, let's name this one as K plus 1, and assume that this is just K. So it should be higher than the previous average objective function. This is our main aim. And at some point, after some number of iterations, generations, we will see that there is not much change between the current and the previous generation. So if that's the case, then we should stop the algorithm, we should stop this optimization, and give the users the best actually solution. Sorry. So there's if you're interested in MATLAB, there are some built-in functions. You can have a look at it. Here you see an example. This is a function, and we have some members in this population. What are they? For instance, there are 40 of them. These all dots are individuals, some random generated individuals, and the aim is here is to find a point which actually maximizes the given function. And for instance, if your point is around here, then yes, you're done. You have found the maximum value. And in this demonstration, there are 20 generations, which means that the optimization actually run for 20 times. And then we'll discuss these, but let me talk about for some time the mutation rate in between the generations, which sometimes keep the, let's say, half of the previous generation, and then we need to modify the other half of the generation. And during these modifications, we may do some mutations. We may apply mutations, and as you see, we have a parameter called mutation rate. This is actually the kind of value. For instance, if you have 1,000, I'm sorry, I couldn't use this one properly. Assume that you have 1,000 of members. If your mutation rate is 0.2%, then that means among these members, just 2 of them will be mutated. So you need to do mutation on 2 members and have new members, new individuals in the next generation. And this is sometimes quite useful, since if you cannot reach a solution with the help of these mutations, you may come up with an feasible solution. And let's briefly talk about the history of biology, history of genetics. As you know, Charles Darwin actually proposed the evolution, and he said that the best, actually the fittest ones, will survive in nature, whether it's just a flower or whether it's a human being or any kind of animals. Always the best ones, the fittest ones, will survive in nature, and the new generations will be much better. And this is actually what we are going to do in this optimization problems. We'll be using genetic algorithms to find the best solution for our design problem. And as you know, again, Mendel proposed some theorems about inheritance of characteristics between the generations. So, and again, this is another kind of knowledge we are going to use in genetic algorithms. We will be transferring some of the characteristics of the previous generations to the next generation, but we will be doing some calculations in between, check which ones are better ones, and depending again on your rules, you may have some of these properties in the next generations or eliminate the worst ones. So now let's talk about terminology behind genetic algorithms. Here you see kind of a chromosome, and we have some genes. So this is the whole chromosome. Now let me make an analogy between our design. Okay, I better use this one. So let me use this part. Assume that again we are working on a cantilever beam. This part is the wall. Our cantilever beam is fixed to the wall. Sorry. Yes. And we need to do some discretization. So I'm going to divide it into some elements. Assume that we have 10 number of elements. Okay, this is our cantilever beam. We have a force applied. Okay, this is our force cantilever beam, and these are our finite elements. We have tens of them. So if you remember from SIMP method, we said that at the end of the optimization, you may have some of these cells filled with material and some still empty, void. So how we can encode this design? For instance, we may have such an encoding. Let's say we have kind of a set of binary values, 1, 1, 0, 0. Assume that this is the first one, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and we have a 10th element here. So let me have 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, and then it's better I have 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1. So this is my kind of an encoding, or I may directly have them at the end of this part so that we have a kind of a number. That number, actually, this binary number will be representing our design. Since we know that the initial design is divided into some elements, and these numbers, binary values, 0 and 1, are representing whether the elements have material or not. So this is how I have done the encoding. This is representing the cantilever beam. Okay, and we can consider this one as a solution as a chromosome. So this is one of the solutions, and we name this one as a chromosome. This is my chromosome, and these actually values are representing the genes. So each element is a kind of a gene in my chromosome, and we may have various solutions. For instance, this one is the first solution, and then I may have such another solution. Let's say 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Yes. This might be the second solution to my problem. And if you look at here, I have some kind of boundary condition. Since this is fixed to the wall and we need to have material at this region. Otherwise, we will have no connection. That's why I have 1, 1 always at the beginning. And if you carefully look at it, I have a kind of a connection between all these elements. This is actually kind of things you need to do while you're implementing this genetic algorithm to solve your topology optimization problem. And in a single generation, you may have n number of solutions, n number of such examples. And then in between generations, what we are doing, we are making use of genetic operators to modify these solutions. As you see initially, here we have 5 of them, and in the next generation again we have 5 solutions, but this time their content is modified a little bit, and this is done with the help of all these operators: the selection, crossover, insertion, and mutation. And In the next slides, I will be talking about what we are doing in these with these operators. This is a fundamental terminology we are going to use in this genetic algorithms. These are the things I mentioned. So let's have a look at the flow chart of genetic algorithms. What we need to do first, we first initialize the population. So let's say again, you have hundreds of solutions in your population, then you need to have 100 individuals and they will all have different chromosomes. And then what we do, we check their performances, calculate our objective function, and then do some, actually apply some genetic operators: selection, crossover, mutation, and insertion. So for instance, in the next generation, you may keep 50% of these members and then generate new members with some other approaches. It's up to you, up to your design, let's say paradigm. You can modify these operators. If, for instance, you don't need to do mutation, so if then your rate might be equal to 0, and you may skip simply this step. And for producing new children, you may use crossover, and the rules of the crossover can be defined by you. You don't need to have predefined, let's say, rules. It's up to you. And then at the end, again, if there is, if the performance is not changing more, then you should stop and output the result of this algorithm. So here is an example, but I'm not going to spend time on it. And so this is describing what to do actually on a computer programming. First of all, obviously, you need to define the representation, do kind of an encoding and decoding as we have done in the previous slides. And you need to have a fitness function. And in our topology optimization problem, obviously, the fitness function can be the solution of the finite element analysis. You may sum the deflections of all the elements. If it's very low, then that means yes, we are stiff enough, our fitness is fine. But if the deflection is too much, then that means that individual is actually not a very good solution. It's better you eliminate and go on with the new solutions. Then what you need to do if you're implementing such an algorithm, you need to define the details of these genetic operators. How we are going to start the generation, how we are going to select, whether you are going to select the first half, the best half, or whether you're going to have the best quarter, is up to you. How we are going to do crossovers, mutation, and insertion. And then you should start the algorithm, check their fitnesses, find the best individuals, and as again, if there is not much change between the generations, you can stop and output the result. But once you cannot actually converge, then you may focus on some of these parameters. You may update your rules, the states of the operators, or you may tune the mutation rate. Here are some examples for encoding and decoding. In biology, for instance, we do encoding with DNA blocks. And in reality, in phenotype, let's say in decision domain, these DNA blocks are representing a property of a person. For instance, blue eye here. And regarding our design problem, we may be making use of such binary values to represent a different property of the design problem. For instance, here you see we have a part and it has a kind of an hole here. The radius of this hole is defined with the binary values in your chromosomes. So it's up to you. And these algorithms implementations are problem-based. It may not be used for a different problem. You need to do lots of modifications. This is actually how they have done the decoding. And if you know the details of encoding, you can easily do decoding. These are not related to our discussion. Yes, now let's focus on fitness function. Obviously, the fitness function is one of the most important parts of these genetic algorithms, since the result of these functions will affect the difference between the generations. So you need to have a proper computation in that step, and you may apply various functions. You may have inequalities, have penalization. It's up to you, or you may use some numeric methods. But the thing is that it's better you have a kind of a computational friendly fitness function. Now let's focus on some of the operators, selection operators. How you are going to do selection. The simplest thing is to do the selection by ranking. Since we have an objective function, you need to calculate the results of actually each solution and have a kind of an order between them. Let me write here, for instance. So now we have calculated J1, for instance, it might be equal to, let's say, 7. And then you may have another solution and its performance is equal to 8. Other one, say this is 4. So you need to do, after you got all these values, you need to order them from highest value to the smallest value, and then depending on their values, you can select the first half, first quarter, just 10% of them. It's up to you. There are different methods, but you can also embed some probability into your selection to make your actually selection more realistic. Otherwise, it may be a kind of a mechanic selection. And the easiest thing actually to do a kind of a selection based on the fitness values, as I've shown you in the previous page. And this is mostly actually done in the genetic algorithm implementations. So the probability of being selected for crossover is directly proportional to the fitness score. So we don't have any randomness. So if the individual has a high score, then it's highly probable that these individuals will be selected and will be used in the next generations. This another type of selection is called roulette wheel selection. So depending on their score, they have, let's say, high probability of being selected. For instance, here, the 5th solution is occupying a very small area, which means that its selection, its probability being in the next generation is low compared to the probability of 6. And we do it according to their scores, according to their objective function values. There are also different approaches like tournament selection, but not important. It's better we focus on the second operator, the crossover. This is highly important since with the help of this crossover, you may obtain totally new solutions. So how we do it? We need to have obviously 2 parents, parent 1, parent 2, and then by using the genes of these parents, we obtain new children. And the intermediate steps are up to you. You can have different rules. For instance, to have O1, children 1, child 1, you may have the first half of P1 directly, and then the second half may be coming from P2. It's up to you. Or you may take one from, let me write it here. I'm sorry. For instance, you may have one from P1, 0, and then one from P2. One from P1, one from P2, 1, 1, 1, 0. So this is up to you. As I said, you can define any kind of rules. Okay. We don't have a specific rule. It depends on the type of problem you're going to solve with genetic algorithm. Here is a discussion of crossover in biology. We have two parents. They have different genes, A, B, and C, D. And as you see, there's a child, a possible child. The chromosome of this child is AC. A is coming from P1 and C is coming from P2. And we may also have other options for it, like AD is also possible, BC possible, and BD. So we have 4 options for this new child. But once you have a larger design problem, you have infinitesimally, you have many solutions. So these are some examples for crossover rules. I'm skipping them. Another thing, somehow related to crossover, you may have a path relinking. This is first parent, second parent. So here you see there are some possible children. And the C1 is very close to P1, which means that it has most of the properties of parent 1, but it has less properties from parent 2, or less genes from parent 2. So this is another approach you can use in crossover. And then we have the other operator, insertion. Since you may be eliminating some of the, let's say, members. Let me talk about again our example. Assume that at generation, let's say n, we have 100 solutions, which means that we have hundreds design solutions or 100 individuals, people. And in the next generation, again, we will have, this is next generation, and still we need to have 100 members, 100 designs. But how we are going to change the initial hundreds? For instance, we may simply have the best half, which means that, let me write it here. We have the best 50. Okay, and then we need to define 50 more. So how we can do it? For instance, we may have we may use crossover, and we write simply cross for that. And from crossover, we may have 30 new members. Okay, and with insertion means you're not using the previous members, but you're generating new members. You are adding new members into this generation, the next generation. So that might be, let's say, 10. So we may have, let me write it, try to write it here, 10 new members, and that will be done with the help of an insertion. And you can do it with different means, but I didn't talk about crossover. How you obtain this 30? You may do the crossover between, from, let's say, one parent from the best half and one parent from the worst half. It's up to you. Or during the crossover, you may always take parents from the best half. It's up to you. The rules are defined by you. And then 10% might be actually 10 new members, maybe added by mutation. It's too much, but assume that this is our kind of an approach right now. We may have 10% from mutation, 10% from insertion, 30% from crossover, and we reserve, we keep actually maintain the best half, the 50% of the members will be from the previous generation. So with the help of these operators, we maintain 100 members in the next generation. And then what we are going to do, again, we will calculate the fitness functions of all these individuals and do the same for the next generation. So let's have a look at some insertion strategies here. It's actually how I have discussed this one. I have selected the best 50 members. You can select n over 2 pairs of serins, have some number of children, and you can have polygamy is possible in genetic algorithms, or you may have, let's say, select 2 parents and from this best health. As usual, I have phone ringing. And sometimes, as I said, you may apply different rules. For instance, you may always keep the best, let's say 5, and do no modification on the best 5 solutions. So it's up to you again, or this might be just a single one. You may always keep the best one and don't do any modification, or don't use this best one in the crossover. It's always up to you. And we also have Hall of Fame approach. You may remember the previous individuals, but you don't use them for the generation of new children. But as you see in crossover, I said that you may use the best health, but in the Hall of Fame approach, you don't use the best health in the or best portions in the next in the crossover of new, let's say, individuals. Then I will briefly talk about initialization, since the first step is quite important for you. If you remember once again our design problem, we have a kind of an, let's say, cantilever beam. This beam is divided into some elements. Why they are arrows? Okay. Remove these. Have another one. Yes. Now we have how many? 12 members, 12 elements in this cantilever beam. And the problem is that how we are going to distribute material, or how we are going to generate new members at the beginning of your algorithm. In our problem, as you know, we have some boundary conditions. We also have some loads. For instance, we should always have material. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. We need to always have material here, since these are connected to the wall, and we have force, we have load here at this element. That's why we need to always have material. Otherwise, the load cannot be applied on our cantilever beam. We need to think about it and try to generate these individuals according to these rules. Otherwise, you cannot calculate their fitness functions. They will not be valid solutions. So the initialization is quite important. And here's a rule of thumb about the initialization, about the size of the population. For instance, you may have, let's say, 10 genes. This is actually the number of genes in your chromosome, or the length of the chromosome. If you have 10 genes, then it's better you have at least 4 times the length of your chromosome as the number of members in your generation. So it's better we have, I'm sorry guys, this is the first time I'm using PDF as an annotator. Okay, assume that this is 40. So there's a rule is that you have at least 40 members in your generation once you have an actually chromosome of length 10. This is the rule of thumb. Otherwise, it will be quite difficult to reach a solution. And this is a typical genetic algorithm convergence. As you see on the y-axis, we have average fitness value of the population or the generation. And then here you see we have on the x the number of generation. So initially the fitness value is low, but once you apply operators, once you create new generations, then the fitness value, the average fitness value of these generations will be increased. As you see, after some point, there will be not much change between the fitness values, and if that's the case, you should stop the algorithm and give the result. And here as you see, we have this one is converging too fast. That might be a low mutation rate or high mutation rate. We cannot give a clear answer, but you may check your problem, check the rules in your problem, and try to find a way for faster convergence. So this is a nice thing actually about the algorithm. If you can tune these parameters such that they will be converging to a value in a shorter time, this is very good. It's fine, and you should go with these parameters. But if it takes lots of time, then that means there is something wrong. You need to update your parameter or change rule or apply a new operator. So this is actually all for this brief introduction to genetic algorithms.